Well, hey everybody, it is good to see you. Welcome to North Shore. Those of you online, great to have you with us as well. For those who may be new around here, I'm Wolfgang. I work here, and so glad that you're here. So glad that I get to be here as we wrap up this It's Okay to Not Be Okay series on what is a really big week. I mean, this being Thanksgiving week. So just a curiosity to get started. Show of hands, how many people have people coming from out of town to their house this week? There are some folks that are doing it? Yeah, quite a few. How many of you have people who are actually staying at your house? They're going to be staying overnight with you at the house. Yes, I see that hand. God bless you. I see that hand. No, I'm kidding. No, it can be a real treat to have friends and family come in from out of town and hang out. We are one of those families who's gearing up this week. My mother-in-law is flying into town to spend Thanksgiving with us. And I know there's all kinds of cliche mother-in-law jokes that get thrown around and so forth. But the beautiful thing in my life, and I'm grateful for this, none of them apply to me. Because I have an amazing mother-in-law. We get along great. She's a blast. In fact, I get along better with her than my wife gets along with her mom, to be perfectly honest. But some of you can relate to that, perhaps. But with my mother-in-law coming into town this week, does anyone want to guess how I spent my day off Friday and all day yesterday? Anyone want to guess? Cleaning. That's right. Cleaning, getting organized, straightening up even the most minute nooks and crannies in our house, whatever a nook or a cranny is. I cleaned it, all right? And we'll be probably doing more of that today. Straighten up the house, because when you have a guest who's going to arrive, you want to be ready for them. You want to make sure things look as good as they possibly can. In fact, I've come to learn there are basically two kinds of people in this world. There are people who keep their house in such a way that a guest could drop by at any point with no problem. And there are people who hate people who keep their house so that at any point people can stop by. You know what I'm talking about, right? The second group is much larger. And if you're part of the first group, we want you to know that Jesus loves you. We're struggling a bit, but Jesus loves you, all right? No, but in all seriousness, we do the best we can, of course, at our house. Both my wife and I work full-time. We have 3 teenage kids, so there's a lot going on. But it takes some getting ready before we're ready for people to come over. Now, if this is true of our houses, that we don't want people to see our mess, that we feel that the need to kind of straighten things up and make things look as good as they possibly can, if that's true when it comes to our houses, isn't it even more true when it comes to our lives? In fact, it's one of the things that we've been talking about over these last several weeks, is this impulse, this tendency to want to somehow present our lives as best as we possibly can, to try to tidy things up, straighten things up, so it makes things look as though they're okay, when in reality, very often, they're not. And so we've been talking about some of the ways that we sometimes just aren't okay and what to do about that. We've talked about some huge topics, things like anxiety, grief or loss in our lives, loneliness, divorce, last week, depression. These are the kinds of things that are behind the closed doors of many people's lives, that they want so badly to keep kind of disguised and hidden and straightened up. They don't want other people to see. And we've been challenging each other that the only path to real healing, the only path toward really finding freedom when it comes to these areas of struggle in our lives, is to open up about the not okayness in our life. And man, we've been seeing people do that. The emails we've been receiving, the phone calls we've been having, the conversations in the hallways or in the lobby, the folks that have been coming down front after service to pray and to talk, the stories coming from our support recovery ministries of people who are finally finding the courage to reach out for help, to acknowledge their struggle, whatever it may be, and finally find the help that they need to kind of turn a corner in their life. And one of the people who's been doing that over the last several months is a young woman named Faith. And she's part of our family here at North Shore. And a while back, she finally reached a point where she realized she wasn't okay, that she couldn't pretend or hide it anymore. And that moment of recognition launched her on a whole new adventure where God met her in the middle of her not okayness and began to open a whole new chapter in her life. And she was generous enough to sit down with our team to tell us a little bit about how God is at work, even in the not okayness of her life. So take a look at Faith's story.
I'd say in the last 5 years, I started having a pretty bad struggle with anxiety. That was something I think I always struggled with, even as a kid, but I just didn't really know what it was. I would feel weird stomach pains and get really nervous about things, be really shy, but I just didn't have the words to really articulate what was going on. And then the more it started bothering me in a way that was in my conscious mind, I think I realized what it was and tried to deal with it in pretty unhealthy ways. I think one of the biggest ones for me was feeling like I needed to control what I ate, how much I ate. I was about to go into my last year of nursing school, and I was getting to the point where I could barely get through days at the hospital where I was doing my training. I would just feel so weak and exhausted all of the time. I just would get through the day, go to bed, wake up and do it again, almost like I was on autopilot. I felt pretty alone just for not putting in any effort to connect with people or with God. I've always thought of depression as being kind of stuck in this fog. You can't really see clearly a purpose to your life. You're just kind of surrounded by that darkness. It wasn't an immediate change, but things started to come together. I definitely had to go through some treatment to get myself physically in a better place. And I was just kind of going through these layers of like the physical stuff, masking the anxiety and the depression, which I think was also masking that spiritual disconnect. I met my fiance who, well, at the time, I wasn't expecting to meet him, but just experiencing a relationship that showed such unconditional love and kindness really brought me back to how God has infinite amounts of kindness and love for us, and it made me really miss that and want to get back to that kind of life. I think the thing that made me want to get baptized was just realizing how specifically God had answered prayers that I thought couldn't or wouldn't be answered. I was so used to isolating myself and just trying to seem like I had everything together and just feeling like I had to shut down the anxiety and depression and deal with it either by myself or just try to avoid it, honestly. So I think there was just this process of learning to be more vulnerable and real with both Connor and friends around me, and God, of course, just being able to bring that to him and know that he cares more than we could ever understand.
I love that smile. Isn't that incredible? It's incredible. Now, there's so much to that story, like there's so much to all of our stories. It's more than 2 or 3 minutes, because it's not always smooth and easy. The process has struggle, it has challenge. She referenced treatment. There's hard work that often happens. But so often things begin to turn when we're finally able to be open about our struggles. I love what Faith said. He cares more about us than we can ever understand. Do you know that? He cares more about you than you could ever understand. And it's very often in the middle of the really hard stuff, the not okay stuff in our life, that we encounter God in a new way. As the song that we just learned together a couple of minutes ago says, He takes what was meant for evil and He turns it for good. And that new path can begin with a willingness to just be open about what's really going on and then inviting Jesus in. That was the mark of opening the door, showing the mess, and letting Him in. See, it's very often in those places where we're not okay that we meet God in a new and fresh way. And maybe some of you can relate to what Faith's been through. Or maybe your not okayness is different. Maybe yours has to do with addiction. some secret thing you've hidden, or anger. You just lose your cool and you can't control it. Or pride. You're so obsessed with being right that it's alienating people around you. There's so many ways that we can be not okay. But here's what I want to talk about in this final week of this series. I want to ask you a question. What will you do with your not okayness? Because we've tried to set the standard that we are the kind of place where we can be honest. It's okay to not be okay. But what are you going to do with that? Now, to talk about that question, I want to look at the story of someone who seemed to be doing okay, actually. As a matter of fact, this person appeared to have everything all together in their life, at least for the most part. And yet, beneath the surface, things were not okay. And everything changed when Jesus came for a visit. So I want you to look with me at a story we have in the New Testament book of Luke, chapter 19. If you have a Bible, you can turn there. If you don't, you can use a Bible app on your phone. There are some amazing ones out there, one called YouVersion. You may want to download YOU version. Fantastic, fantastic resource. If you want a physical Bible like this, come see me. I'd love to get you one. Or, of course, I'll put them up on the screen as well. But this is kind of a familiar story that I'm hoping you'll see today in an unfamiliar way. Luke chapter 19, starting in verse 1. Here's what the New Testament tells us. It says, Jesus entered Jericho, which was an important city at the time. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner, they said. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Then Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man, speaking of himself, Jesus here, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. Now, when we first meet Zacchaeus, you wouldn't think of his life as being a mess. It says he was wealthy. He had this successful career as a tax collector. Now, here's this guy, in fact, who's incredibly successful by most standards, doing really, really well. Now, he may not win many popularity contests as a tax collector, but you know what? Who cares, right? Because if you're doing well, what do you care what other people think? Now, some know. In his day and in his situation, tax collectors were hated, even more so than they are in our world today. No offense to our IRS friends today, all right? They were hated. And here's why. He understood how to take a bad situation and turn it into a good situation for himself. You ever known somebody like that? For everyone else, the world has gone upside down, but this person is so clever, so industrious, so smart, so shrewd, that they know how to leverage any crisis so that they can profit from it. That's Zacchaeus. Of course, the Roman Empire had come in, taken control of this area. They were exploiting the Jewish people, of whom Zacchaeus was one. But Zacchaeus figured out how to leverage this all for his own personal gain, how to get his. In fact, it tells us that he was chief tax collector, not just one of your run-of-the-mill guys. He'd worked his way up the ladder. Now, he was entrusted with the wealth of the Roman Empire that had been taken from his own people. And if he could just live with betraying his neighbors, maybe occasionally being a little aggressive with people less fortunate than himself, if he could just live with that, he had the potential to become incredibly wealthy by getting to keep a small percentage of what he collected for himself. He just had to be willing to every once in a while threaten somebody, take advantage of someone a little weaker than him. You ever known somebody like that? Who just can't, They just don't seem to care who it is they step on, who they have to crush, because if you're in the way of their success or their goals or their advancement, they won't think twice about doing whatever it takes to get you out of the way. That's Zacchaeus. And so what if he's made a few enemies along the way? You got to do what you got to do to get ahead in this world. If you want to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. Isn't that the saying? And so he's comfortable. The people around him aren't comfortable. In fact, their lives are sort of a mess, but not Zacchaeus. He doesn't struggle like his neighbors do. He's got plenty in his life. But there's another kind of mess that sometimes can come. A mess that can be disguised or hidden by the kind of success and affluence that Zacchaeus had experienced. Because underneath this success and wealth, there's still something missing, it seems. He's looking for something. And so the story tells us he goes looking for Jesus. Verse 3. It says, Zacchaeus wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. How'd you like to have that be like your defining mark written down for all time, right? Poor guy. Anyhow. Next verse, verse 4. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. Now, why do you think Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus so badly that day? Do you think it was just kind of a celebrity deal? You think he was just curious? Maybe he just wanted to see this person who he heard so much about doing all these amazing things that some people were speculating was the one God had sent to be the rescuer and deliverer of his people? That could be. But I wonder if maybe there was something deeper going on here. I wonder if maybe Zacchaeus was looking for something that all that wealth and all that success that he had experienced had not yet been able to satisfy. Maybe there was some sort of emptiness that he felt, and he was looking for it, a solution, something. Now, I've found in my experience this happens to a lot of folks. Over the years, I've come to know many, many people who have been amazingly successful, either in their business world, in their family life. It seems as though they have this Midas touch. Everything they're involved with seems to flourish. And in one form or another, they have everything that many people dream about. They have the big house, they have the great job, they have the beautiful family, they have the social media accounts filled with amazing vacation photos and experiences. And yet in their honest moments, these friends have often said, as fun as all that stuff is, there's still often something missing. There's not necessarily anything wrong with those things, of course. They're just not enough. It doesn't satisfy. And they're not always able to articulate about exactly what it is, but deep down, they'll admit there's something more that they're craving. There's a great quote from the actor and comedian Jim Carrey. Many of you remember him. He once said this. He said, "I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that it's not the answer," he said. Zacchaeus, wealthy, successful, powerful, not okay. Still searching for something. So he comes looking for Jesus. And I think there's another reason he picked Jesus in particular. Some of you may know that one of Jesus' followers, one of his closest 12, had formerly been a tax collector. His name was Levi. More people know him by the name Matthew. Levi had probably become very wealthy doing the exact same kinds of things that Zacchaeus had been doing to climb the ladder, to build his own wealth and success. But along the way, Levi had encountered Jesus. Jesus had called him to become one of his followers. And Levi left all of that luxurious lifestyle to come and become a follower of Jesus. His life had been changed. And who knows if they knew each other, but I would guess that in a small community like this, word travels through the tax collector grapevine. People knew Levi's life had been changed, and somehow Jesus had stepped into his life and changed who Levi was. I wonder if just a little, Zacchaeus was curious to see for himself this man who had transformed the life of one of his former colleagues. He was curious. I wonder if it could happen for me. You know, maybe you're here today and you're not sure about any of this Jesus stuff, and I want you to know I'm so glad you're here. Maybe a friend brought you, whatever reason you wandered in here today. We're so glad you're here. You logged in to watch this video. We're so glad you're around. And maybe you've heard stories. Maybe stories like we just watched a moment ago with Faith, or if you've been with us through this series, other powerful stories of people whose lives have been transformed in extraordinary ways because of a relationship with Jesus. And you hear those stories and you see those examples and you think, I wonder, is that really true? Could it be? Or maybe you have a friend or a family member. Maybe they invited you here today. They became a follower of Jesus, and you've noticed something change in them. They may still be well off. They may still be successful at the things that they do, but it just seems like the focus of their life has shifted. It's no longer just about that stuff. Or maybe you know somebody who went through some deeply painful season in their life, and you could not explain how it was they could hold on to their faith and their hope and their peace and their joy in the middle of it all. It left you scratching your head. And so like Zacchaeus, you're curious. You want to take a look for yourself because you've heard about this Jesus that seems to do amazing things like this. But could it be? Is it real? Is it possible? Zacchaeus was curious. So he climbs the sycamore fig tree with Jesus on the way. Then verse 5. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. You see, Jesus notices Zacchaeus. It'd be easy in clearly a large crowd to just kind of overlook the people that are there, but for whatever reason, he sees Zacchaeus, perhaps the least likely person to be seen in this moment. And Jesus calls him by name. Zacchaeus, why don't you come down here? I'd like to spend some more time with you. I'd like to come to your house. Now, how would most of us respond? We've already established it, haven't we? Come to my house? I'm not ready for guests, right? What? Are you kidding me? This big name guy, this one that all these people are crowding to see, that everybody's talking about, he wants to come to my house? He's going to see where I live? He's going to see how I live? Because this is more than just Jesus inviting himself over for lunch. This is an invitation to step into his life, to step into his story, to step into his mess. Zacchaeus just wanted to get a look at Jesus, but Jesus wanted to get a hold of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was just curious, but Jesus was committed. And this is the critical moment. Zacchaeus, in his curiosity, has at least shown some motion toward exploring who Jesus is. And Jesus invites him deeper. What will Zacchaeus say? No, Lord, thanks, Jesus. It sounds like a great offer, but I know you're a busy man. I'm certainly a busy man. I'm not ready for you to come. Maybe come by tomorrow afternoon after I have a chance to straighten things up. Or would he say, as he climbed down from that tree, yeah, come on in. Let's come into my life. Let's go hang out. See, in some ways, this is the decision that we are all faced with. Every human being, I believe this. Jesus sees us. He knows who you are. He sees you even in a room of this size, even as you watch this online. He sees you. He knows you. And he calls out your name. And he says, whatever mess is in your life, whatever you have hidden behind the doors for no one else to see, I know it's there and I want to come in. You don't have to fix it yourself or tidy it up. Just open the door. Let me in. What will you say? Oh, Jesus, my life's kind of a mess. I have some things I need to clean up first, some bad habits. Once I get those knocked out, then maybe we can talk. Or, it sounds like a very nice offer, Jesus, thank you, and someday I might take you up on it. But right now, my life's about some other priorities. I've got bigger things I want to focus on. When I'm older, after I achieve what I want to achieve, then maybe I'll look into it. But I'm not ready now. Or, Jesus, I'm busy. Could you come back later? For one reason or another, one way or another, we try to keep him on the outside instead of letting him in. This is the question of today. What will you do with the parts of your life that aren't okay? Will you hide them, keep them behind a closed door, pretend they're not there, or will you do what Zacchaeus did and open the door and invite Jesus in to welcome him gladly it says. I'd love you to step into my life. I admit I am not okay in ways I know and experience, and in ways I probably can't even articulate. But the truth is, there's a lot of not okayness in my life. There's an emptiness that I have tried to fill with so many things, and nothing seems to satisfy. I've tried all kinds of stuff. But I think I'm at the point now where I'm ready to say, I'm not okay, and I need a new beginning. I need your healing, your hope, your love, your joy, your peace. Everything changes for Zacchaeus. Not when Jesus calls him, but when Zacchaeus climbs down that tree, lets him into his life. And I want you to know, if you're here today, when you feel like you're looking for God, you always need to keep in mind it's the other way around. You may feel like God's elusive and hard to find, but the Bible says God is near those who seek him. He rewards those who earnestly seek him, it says. Even when you're even mildly interested in God, he is intensely interested in you. And even that mild curiosity can lead to the most incredible encounter with the creator of the universe. Because in that moment when you first become open to him, the truth is he has always been open to you. And he's just waiting for you to stop running from him. He's chasing you, not in an angry way, but with his love. And he says to you, just like he said to Zacchaeus, I must come to your house today. Will you receive him with gladness? Well, when Jesus and Zacchaeus decide to spend time, you can just imagine how happy everyone else is, right? Because we love it when we see evil, corrupt people suddenly not getting what they deserve, but instead getting forgiveness, right? Right? No, maybe not so much. Look at what happens. Verse 7. It says, all the people saw this and began to mutter. I love that, mutter. You know any mutterers? All the people saw this and began to mutter. He's gone to be the guest of a sinner, he says. They're muttering. Now, Zacchaeus' reputation didn't get better because Jesus went to eat with him. But Jesus' reputation certainly got worse. Because think about this. You think this is the first time Zacchaeus has ever been called names? I promise you it's not. Remember, he's shorter, right? So he probably grew up being made fun of, just like a lot of kids are. And I wonder if part of what drove him to be successful was this drive to prove himself taller than anybody else. You know anybody like that? They're so committed, they're so driven because they're going to prove themselves to everybody who doubted them. I think that was probably the driving, defining motivation in Zacchaeus' life. Do you know anything about that? But Jesus, in this beautiful moment, says, you have nothing to prove. These criticisms come, and they come in a new way. They're not accusations flying at Zacchaeus. They're being directed at Jesus because he's in the home of a sinner. And I'd never noticed this before. It seems Zacchaeus was actually trying to protect not his own reputation, but Jesus' reputation in this scene. Look at verse 8. Zacchaeus stood up, so this is in front of folks, and said to the Lord, probably to others there as well, look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. See, Zacchaeus heard what they said about Jesus because Jesus had accepted Zacchaeus. And he says, here's what I'm going to do. Not to protect my reputation, because I don't have one. This is what I'm going to do to protect your reputation, because you've been so gracious with me. You've been so kind to me. You've been so welcoming to me. You came into my house. You came into my life. Because you've made room for me, I'm going to give away half of my wealth to the poor, which of course is where he'd gotten it in the first place. And if I've ever taken something wrongly, which of course he had, I'm going to pay it back 4 times. I'm going to make it right. What Zacchaeus is saying to Jesus is this: I know the life I've been living is not okay. As good as it's been, it's not okay. Because I know who I've been. I know who I am. And I know who I want to become because of you. See, it's one of the beautiful things that happens when you welcome Jesus into your life. When you enter into a relationship with God, he begins the healing from the inside out. He's less concerned about the surface and more concerned about what's underneath. Those internal wounds, those soul wounds that nobody else can see, that hunger that all the success in the world can't ever satisfy. And I wonder if you're here today and you've spent so much of your life trying to look good on the outside, trying to earn the approval of everyone around you. I mean, just think, how much of your life has been spent trying to make everybody else think you're okay? So concerned with the outside. See, one of the beautiful things that happens when you really get the gist of who God is, who Jesus is, you realize you don't have to hide anymore. You don't have to pretend anymore or act like you're perfect anymore. You don't have to act like you have it all together. You can be honest and simply say, God, I am done pretending I'm okay. I need you to heal the wounds that no one else can see, to heal the brokenness that I can't even understand myself. And it all begins with welcoming Jesus in. So issues you can't fix yourself. You ever tried? You can't put this back together without him. And so the invitation is simply to open the door. Open the door to step into the not okayness in your life, whatever that not okayness may be. Maybe it is the things we've talked about. You know the burden of anxiety. You know the ache of grief and loss. You feel the deep sense of loneliness or the pain of divorce. You know the darkness of depression. Or maybe your not okayness is in other forms. Maybe it's some sort of addiction, as I said, or it could be greed, like Zacchaeus struggled with, this drive to prove yourself and to show everybody that you can have what it takes. Or this self-centeredness that only ever thinks of you instead of others. Those things, they're all symptoms of a deeper kind of brokenness in our soul. The Bible calls it sin. That no amount of money or success or fun or distraction can ever heal. It's an internal soul wound that needs the healing that only Jesus can bring. See, friends, there are lots of ways to not be okay, but Jesus makes a way where we can be okay, where we can experience the kind of grace that Zacchaeus experienced. Look at what Jesus says in verse 9. Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house because this man too is a son of Abraham." I love this. No one else saw him as part of the family. They didn't think he belonged. Jesus says, "You're welcome. You're part of the family. You belong here. You're my brother. Come be with me." And then Jesus says this, verse 10. "For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." Son of Man is one of the ways Jesus sometimes refers to himself. He came to seek and save the lost. It's amazing. It's amazing how easy it is to see someone who appears to have everything all together and never see the not okayness in their soul, the lostness in their soul. Jesus says, that's the whole reason I'm here. I'm here for those who look as though they have everything together, all that anyone would want in life, but who deep down are lost or wounded or not okay. He came for all the Zacchaeuses in our world and in this room and watching right now. And those who may appear to have it all together in life, but know inside something is missing. And maybe you have been amazingly successful in your life, achieved everything you set out to achieve. But maybe you honestly still feel empty and not okay. So what I love about Jesus is he steps into our lives, he calls us by name, he invites himself into your space, and he waits for you to open the door. Even if what's behind it is a mess, because it always is. Even if everything in you wants to keep it hidden, he wants to step into that mess and begin to rebuild. And he doesn't just want the parts of your life that aren't okay, he wants all of your life. And he says this simple thing, "I stand at the door and knock." My question for you today is, will you let him in? Will you let him in? I want to give you a chance to do that today. So would you just bow your head with me if you're here in the room or if you're watching online? Here in the room, there's a card that's in the back of the seat in front of you that I'd love for you to grab right now. And for those of you watching online, there's a link that'll pop up in the comments section. You can follow along using that link. And there's a place there that you can put your name and a way to get in touch with you. There's a space where you can write down any prayer requests, things we can be praying with you about in your life. But there are a few boxes that I want to point out there There's a place that you can mark that you're ready to admit that you aren't okay. That you want to ask God to do the healing only that He can. To say, simply, I want to follow you, Jesus. I'm not okay, and I'm not going to get okay on my own. I need you. Not just bringing the parts of your life that are broken, but all of you. It's you saying, I need your healing, your welcome, your grace in my life. Or, for those who've already made that decision before, there's a box there that you can mark and say, you know, the truth is, I've sort of wandered away from this, and I've sort of done my own thing. I tried to ignore the not okay parts of my life. I need to come back and just own it, acknowledge it, invite you in, open the door. You can mark that there. And then there's also a place that you can mark that you want to be baptized. And you saw it in Faith's story, this beautiful image of going down into the water, this new life that we can have in Jesus. And if you haven't taken that step to be baptized, to go public with your faith, to ask God for a new beginning, if you haven't done that, I urge you to do it. We've got a great opportunity coming up on Sunday, December 15th in our weekend services here on Sunday. As part of our worship celebration, we're going to be doing baptisms. We've already got several people signed up. We'd love for you to have that special moment as well. You can mark that on the card, or you can indicate it there online, and let us know you want to be part of that experience, and we'll follow up with you to get it scheduled. For those that are here, you can drop those cards in the buckets that go by a little later in our offering. For those online, there will be folks that will follow up with you as you fill that out. But let me pray for us. God, I thank you for the incredible, incredible offer that you make. That you see us, that you know us, and that you ask us to invite you in. Now, God, there will be people in this room right now who, for whatever reason, have felt like they needed to fix themselves, tidy things up. They come around to it later, holding you at arm's length. This is the day that changes. For some in this room who simply say, I want to open the door. I want to invite you in. Step into my mess. Walk with me through the healing that needs to happen. Show me a new way. This could be a turning point for you. Don't miss this chance. It all begins with a simple prayer. It's just a simple acknowledgement. Lord, I need you. I need you. And so we're going to sing that prayer together. And you can either sing it for the very first time, or you can sing it just to reinstate that, reinforce that desire. I need you, that acknowledgement. I need you, God. I need you. I admit it. I lay my not okayness before you. I ask for your grace. I thank you. And I pray it in the name of the one who's been changing lives for so long, Jesus Christ. Amen.